Hello everyone and welcome back to a brand new video of Fox Flicks on Josh Sculpture. Today we're checking out his 30-minute video about the top 10 remakes. Let's hop in and see just which games became better. I will say, I will never stop loving this franchise. Always awesome. There's nothing else that I can think that's better than this. Always
Like
awesome.
it or not, we've reached the age of media where it's much safer to do reboots and revivals of an already existing franchise rather than do something original. After all, why gamble with an original passion project when you can safely cash in on someone's nostalgia? It could be an amazing continuation of a timeless classic, unless it isn't. Or it could be a heartfelt retelling that took everything we love about the original and made it even better. Unless it doesn't. Either way, it's bound to get fans talking, for better or worse. And you better believe the same rule applies to video games. Taking an older game and completely revamping it can be either a treat for old and new fans, or a total disaster. And today we're giving our thanks to the ones who got it right. But first, I'd like to clear one thing up first. These are remakes, not remasters. And yes, there is a difference. A remaster is basically taking what's already finished and adding a fresh coat of paint to it. Whereas a remake is rebuilding or redoing everything from the ground up. Rest assured, should the need arise,
and it will.
Always.
We will do a remasters list someday because they're worth their own video entirely. But right now, let's focus on the
I know
remakes.
that game.
More specifically, how they rank in the following categories. How much they improve over the original. If a remake manages to fix anything that was broken with its predecessor, it ranks higher. How much do they add over the original? As much as we love the OG game, it could always use a little something extra to make it feel fresh. And more importantly, how much do they recapture that nostalgic feeling of playing the game when it first came out? Will it offer a similar amount of heart and dedication that the title deserves? Even if for one brief moment, will it tug at our heartstrings and make us say,
"Good to see you again, old friend. Mountains can't be friends."
Good to see you, old friend. Wait, mountains can't be friends. Shh. Oh, come on, ad. And we're back.
In 1993, the Legend of Zelda franchise took its first step into the world of handheld gaming with Link's Awakening for the Game Boy, and eventually the Game Boy Color. It takes our boy Link outside the land of Hyrule and far away from Zelda. Not much of a Zelda game then, is it?
You steal all the credit for work that other people do!
Anyways, he finds himself stranded on the island of Koholint, and the only way to escape is to traverse across the island and awaken the Windfish. Oh, and spoiler alert.
It was just a dream.
Yeah, they really pulled the "it was all just a dream" card.
But no, yeah, it really was a dream.
And yet they made it work. Seriously, there's actually a friggin' moral dilemma that stopping the dream makes everyone on the island disappear. Already, that earns this game a lot of brownie points. With the addition of an engrossing story, all at the palm of your hands is just icing on the cake. That being said, it wasn't without its boo-boos. Critics weren't too keen on the monochromatic graphics.
I can make good graphics. You better make good graphics! I'm supposed to release a video computer game on TV without this graphic!
Luckily, the Game Boy Color version improved the graphics a skosh, but there was still the issue of the awkward controls. Still, that didn't fully deter from a solid Zelda game, but what could they do to make it better? Oh, that's easy. Turn Link into a child's plaything! 2 decades later, in comes the 2019 remake for the Switch, and it blew everything we liked about the original out of the water. For starters, they gave the graphics a welcome style change with 3D graphics with toy-like characters and a diorama world. It's honestly adorable and makes things stand out a whole lot more. Adding to it, the tilt-shift visuals still perfectly capture the Game Boy's POV for the modern setting. And to really spice it up, they added a new feature where you can customize your own dungeon levels. Something that any Mario Maker fan can appreciate. But there's a catch, because there always is. For everything they fixed and got right, there's still the occasional setback. In this case, the improved graphics bring with them the occasional slowdown issue where the game lags if too much happens on screen. Unfortunately, this is bound to happen with HD graphic games, and yeah, It's annoying, but I don't think it's enough to damage a major upgrade to an already enjoyable game. That's just me.
It just makes sense.
Despite being on the far more powerful PlayStation, Tales of Destiny wasn't really much of an improvement over Fantasia. The attacks were still incredibly slow, and the game would pause anytime a spell got cast. Yeah, really putting the action in action RPG there. Fortunately, all this was completely fixed in the remake. Right off the bat, the presentation is absolutely insane.
Damn.
It looks good almost 16 years later. By far, the biggest improvement the remake made was the combat. It manages to accomplish the task of being insanely over the top while also being surprisingly balanced. Right off the bat, the TP system was removed and replaced with a new one. Having to hoard items was now a thing of the past. Half of your characters have elemental weaknesses, which means you have to pay attention to the attacks enemies use and plan out your party. The enemies also have their own weaknesses and resistances as well, including those to physical damage types. Since characters often focus on one element, it means that it's often required to switch characters in order to win, unlike other games in the series where you can just steamroll everything as the main character. Weaknesses deal more damage, and resistances take less on higher difficulties, so this gives a risk-reward system while also keeping things fair and challenging, unlike some other games. Enemies do not randomly break out of combos either. Instead, they have a meter that builds as you attack them and break out when it's full. However, enemies cannot break out in the air, meaning juggling is the most efficient way to combo. Tekken players, this is for you. Doing so requires timing your attacks with your allies, so you have to work as a team while also managing your own attack cooldown. This completely solves the problems other games in the series had of enemies breaking out whenever they feel like it or being complete punching bags. Among those who have played it, Tales of Destiny is often considered to be the greatest game in the series, and for very good reason.
If we could only get an official English release.
Man, the Japanese get all the cool stuff.
Oh, come on, again?
Mr.
And we're back. Number 8.
I've talked about Ys a few times in the last year, and I bet most of the people who see those entries have zero idea what the heck I'm talking about.
What the f*** is that?
Well, time for a quick history
That's
lesson.
what I'm even
Ys is
asking.
one of the oldest action RPGs around, with the first game coming out all the way back in 1987. 5 months before another lesser-known video game series got its first release. You may have heard of it. I think it was called The Ending Escapism, Terminated Tale, The Last Story. Oh, wait. Yeah, Ys is one of the pioneers for both action RPGs and great soundtracks and games. Though I admit the earlier games love taking Zelda's homework, changing a few things and slapping its name on it. Well, okay, it isn't that bad, but there are a lot of similarities between both early games. It isn't surprising that when most of the earlier games got remade, they went in wildly different directions to match what Ys was doing at the time. The two that got the most changes were Ys 3 and 4. Ys 3 started out as a 2D platformer with large difficulty spikes that came in randomly.
Like Link's Story
that sounds
2.
familiar. It was also stage-based and relied on you using your shield and sword at different angles to fight enemies. In 2005, the game was remade. Not as a 2D platformer, but as a 2.5D action RPG. And no, they didn't base it off of Phantom Hourglass or something else like that. Ys the Oath of Felghana focused on a combination of speedy gameplay and platforming sections, improving on the engine created for Ys 6. This made the game very intuitive, much faster, and much harder. Even with no invincibility frames and no consumable items, the gameplay doesn't feel unfair, though it will be one of the hardest things you play if you attempt it on Nightmare or Inferno difficulty. Still, to this day, it's considered one of the best Ys games. Ys 4 has its own complicated history, though. It was originally licensed to 2 other studios, so 2 Ys 4s came out within the same in-game region, but with 2 different stories. Yes, you heard me correctly.
That ain't good.
No, I don't understand it either. What matters is that one of these 2 games, Ys 4 Mask of the Sun, got a full remake in 2012 by Falcom, finally making it canon to the Ys timeline. Yay!
Okay,
Ys Memories of Selketa continued the new battle system introduced in Ys 7, making it more of a party-based action RPG than just using Adol. It improved the battle system, making it more streamlined and more action-focused than before. Besides the graphical overhaul and new combat system, it added in new characters, a new memory system to gain some background on our red-headed hero, and expanded the story from where the original game ended. It was the equivalent of going from Link's
That's
Awakening to Tales of Berseria. That was the difference between the two games. It's amazing how the difference between the remakes compared to the originals is to the point where the only
Even I
things that are
gotta
really
give some
similar
props.
are the
This is awesome.
stories. Considering Falcom does its
Probably
best to
not
make sure a
awesome, but
lot
at
of
least
its more
cool.
popular games are still brought to modern consoles, probably won't be the last we see of these remakes.
We may finally
maybe.
get a good East 5 remake. The East fans will get that one.
Alright, whatever you say, Josh. On to number 7.
7 years after the demise of Metroid in 2010, we waited 7 years for a new, good Metroid game. It was really rough, but it was worth it. Not only do we get a remake of a buried classic, but it's amazing! Metroid Samus Returns is, for lack of a better term, the return to form that fans of Metroid desperately craved. While this does lead to the another Metroid 2 remake debacle, which, let's face it, we could blame fans for being impatient at that point, the official product we
everyone
do
is a
get
little
is
impatient.
beyond worth it. The 3DS remake takes the foundation of Game Boy's Metroid 2 and ups the ante with complex environments, better puzzles, and a much welcomed
Nice.
addition to standard combat. The melee attack adds some pretty nifty dimensions to
you can
knocking out
smack
enemies.
them.
This is especially prevalent in the bosses and Metroid fights, where you're actively encouraged to flip them off their guard and tear into them in cinematic fashion.
Damn.
And speaking of
That is
bosses,
cool.
the game doesn't have that many different ones, but the ones we do fight are pretty exciting. Sure, the Gamma Metroids can be annoying when it switches between rooms too often, but the Zeta Metroids are tricky enough that they're rewarding to figure out, and the Mega Metroids are a glorious step up from Fusion, laser
Nice.
beams and all. The new bosses are amazing too. Diggernaut is one heck of a
Whoa,
brain
what
blaster
the-
that really puts your Metroid expertise to the test, and I will die on a hill when I say that Ridley's fight is still freaking spectacular. Now, yes, a lot of people will continue to compare this game with another Metroid 2 remake, and understandably, people do find its gameplay tighter and the pixel style much
Neat.
more appealing. While I definitely agree with that, I don't believe it's worth
I'd like to see a
dismissing
full
what the
animation of the
official
Metroid
remake
life,
set out to accomplish
cycle.
either, especially when you look at the epilogue. I'm not going to get into too much detail for those who haven't experienced the full thing, but let's just say, eat your heart out, Other M. This is how you do an emotional scene! Oh no, let's just be grateful that Nintendo hasn't chosen to leave Metroid for dead, unlike other franchises,
good.
and has decided to improve upon what's familiar so they can get back on the right track.
Improve on the
And thanks
familial.
to that, I got aboard the Dread hype
and-
train, and I'm ready
Oop.
for the rides to come.
Whoa. He's down. And then on to number 6.
Come on, you shouldn't be
Um,
too shocked that a remake
okay,
to
Metal Gear,
surpass the
right,
original
right.
Metal Gear Solid would make it on here. When you get a remake under the guise of both Hideo Kojima and Shigeru Miyamoto, and the developer of the only GameCube game more fourth wall breaking than Metal Gear Solid 2, you know we got something insane here.
Nice.
Like most of the remakes
I
on here,
think-
they really went all out building this game from the ground up. The gameplay was improved to be based on Metal Gear Solid 2, allowing for more ways to interact with enemies and increasing their AI as well. This also included the option of a
Clever.
first-person mode, which really helped with aiming. The cinematics were completely redone too by Japanese action film director Ryuhei Kitamura, I'm sorry if I mispronounced that, making them
There's a
much more
chance.
action-focused than the original. Though people did criticize the excessive amount of bullet time effect, which isn't too surprising since Matrix came out around then. Didn't realize Metal Gear was the first to rip that off. Besides the usual graphic and gameplay changes, we also got some nice Easter eggs with different consoles, like how they completely updated Psycho Mantis' scene to do Nintendo games instead of PlayStation ones. One
Oh.
interesting change they did was also re-record all of the voice lines, as switching to the GameCube caused the audio quality to increase. This meant any background noise from the PS port didn't show up here. It really was
Huh.
a full remake through
Nice.
and through. This remake was so good that it eclipses the original by a large margin. Too bad that it's really hard to grab as it was never ported out
Whoa.
of the GameCube.
Oh.
Even when they moved all of the games
Yeah,
to
that makes
PS3 with the
frickin'
Legacy
sense.
Collection, we only got the original version. Still, if you're able to
I
get
mean,
it, please do, as
Legacy
it is
makes sense.
fantastic.
Oh, ad. And we're back.
Maybe Super Mario 64 DS needed longer in the oven.
Rebel Luigi, you're a fantastic YouTuber. And with all due respect, no.
Huh?
Super Mario 64 is already considered
on.
a
What are
timeless
you talking
classic
about?
on its own. While the game doesn't necessarily have perfect controls, it never demanded you always do everything precisely just to beat the game. There's that strangely charming edge of flawedness to how the game plays that makes it such an enticing challenge for the fans of Mario and 3D platformers alike. And in my opinion, the DS
Why
remake
were you
is the
fighting
same, but
hands in it?
in many ways better. Let's look at just how much the game adds on top of the original. Multiple new characters to play with, including Yoshi, Wario, and yes, the L is indeed real. It's been so for a while now. Each character has their own special
Nice.
perk, like Mario's all-around movement, Luigi's speed and jump height, Wario being the absolute unit we all love, and Yoshi having
Makes
his
sense.
signature flutter jump and craving for Goomba flesh. Each character is interesting and fun to
Would it
play,
really be
especially
flesh,
since they
though?
give us a
And not just,
different
like,
look at
Bible?
how each of the old Mario 64 levels work with different physics
Maybe it
and
is
mechanics. But that's not all it has. The game's got a handful of new levels, challenges, and boss fights to throw at us, and they're
Oh,
all
a King
really
Boo
well
boss?
done. Seriously, where else are you gonna find a Goomba King fight that's actually mildly challenging? And the minigames? Do I even have to elaborate? You know them all.
Oh.
Wanted, Trampoline Time, Bob-omb Squad, Shell Smash, Sword Explode, all of Luigi's card games. There's a lot of minigames here worth your time to play and unlock. I'd even dare
Cool.
say these alone are worth the whole game. So with that out of the way, let's talk about the controls. Yes, the
Go
D-pad
on.
substituting the control stick can be weird. In fact, the DS as a whole has had complaints about its button scheme holding back certain games for a while. But is it really that bad? Let's be honest, Mario 64 controls have always been kind of awkward and take a level of thought to get used to,
They
even
can
with
be
the control stick.
troublesome.
I know some people have actually enjoyed using the D-pad more since the movement feels less wonky to them. So, especially for first-timers to Mario 64, I'd say both controls have their own learning curve that takes a bit of time. But it's never a
makes sense.
chore to get used to. So, considering the controls didn't hold the game back for me at all, the game as a whole feels like a straight upgrade. The graphics are nicer, the content is more than enough to keep players busy, and being able to take it to go is just the icing on the cake. Sure, many
Yeah, I
people
mean,
would still
that is
rather
a
play the original,
definitely
but
good
for all that
benefit.
it's worth, this is one remake fans shouldn't sleep on.
On to number 4. What you got?
There are a few JRPGs with the brand name recognition that Final Fantasy commands. Years before
Oh, Final
Pokemon was a
Fantasy VII remake,
glimmer in
huh?
Satoshi Tajiri's eye, the original Final Fantasy was saving Square from going the way of the
Jeez.
dodo. For good or for ill, when it comes to such long-running franchises, there will be games that define the franchise, and for a while, Final Fantasy XIV has made leaps and bounds in that direction. Though I doubt it will ever eclipse the legendary place Final Fantasy VII has in the Final Fantasy community
That's what I
and the
was
public
thinking.
consciousness as a whole. Of course, this is a list of remakes, and the original Final Fantasy game came out in 1997. Few remakes are lucky enough to have so many of the people who worked on the original come back to work on the remake.
Nice.
Yoshinori Kitase, Tetsuya Nomura, Kazushige Najima, Motomo Toriyama,
The
and
original
Nobuo
cast
Uematsu
did the remake.
all returned. All of them now had 15 years more experience under their belts. All of them had 15
Nice.
years to think about what had worked about the original, what regrets they had,
And how to make it
and wishes
better.
that had gone unfulfilled. They could have played it safe. They could have simply remade Final Fantasy VII with modern graphics, sound, voice acting, and maybe some minor story fixes and left it at that.
Maybe.
After all, Final Fantasy VII is widely regarded as a classic, a game that people adore. Instead, they decided to boldly charge ahead. The
Whoa.
story, the gameplay, the characters, the graphics, everything was looked at with a critical eye. They weren't afraid to make the changes they wanted. This wasn't just
They
going to
wanted
be
to change
Final
it, and
Fantasy
they
VII,
did.
but prettier. This is going to be a true, from the ground up remake. However, while I applaud their ambition and creativity, the fact of the matter is that what we have so far is only part one of what's supposed to be 3 parts.
Oh.
We only have the first disc. So without knowing how the rest of the trilogy goes, I can't
I'm
really
intrigued
place
now.
it any higher on the list in good faith. Still, I eagerly await what comes next. If it ever comes out.
Oh, come on. And we're back.
Please come out.
Moving on to number 3. Huh, number 3, and yeah, we still got a whole nother 10 minutes.
Live Alive is a fascinating experience. It's an RPG with a grid-based battle system that encourages strategy based on positioning and range. And for the time it came out, it's pretty much on par with Legend of the Seven Stars with how fresh it is to have a non-linear RPG system.
Oh.
And the story, well, stories pay homage to various genres like kung fu, sci-fi, fighters tournament, and even shonen giant robots.
Okay,
now there's a new
that's
twist
cool.
on a tired old gag.
You said it, Joe.
All of these have their own interesting twists and turns that seemingly build up to something bigger. Looking at the original, though, the age really shows. While the stories
Definitely.
are still great, the gameplay really doesn't do much in terms of polish and intuition. They just throw you to the line stand without explaining to you how the mechanics work.
Literally.
And you're supposed to just figure things out on your own. And to be fair, that's what gaming manuals were for back in the day, but any who played the fan translations were SOL on that front. Yeah, for a game with a lot of features to keep tabs on, that can be a big turnoff. Doesn't help that the game's vague sense of direction. You're probably gonna get lost not knowing how to progress the story.
Yeah.
And your future chapter is the most guilty of this. Thankfully, the remake did wonders in improving that by giving us a slew of
Perfect.
tips we can refer to whenever needed, as well as clearer indicators of elemental moves and weaknesses. You have
Perfect.
no idea how much more fun battling feels with all of these on hand until you actually
Makes
play it
everything a
yourself.
whole lot easier.
And if getting lost isn't your cup of tea, there's a radar that can help you get wherever you need to. It's definitely useful, but again, can throw its fair share of curveballs, whether we like it or not. But even with all that aside, the presentation is legendary. The use of HD 2D looks so good here
This
with
is actually
lively
pretty awesome
environments and for
looking.
once, no annoying fog filter. The song remixes are also beautifully on point, and the voice acting is surprisingly top-notch. You gotta hand it to them for going out of their way to find ethnically accurate
Damn.
actors who can pull off some stellar emotional range with every character. It really adds a lot to the weight and impact of chapters like Distant Future, Imperial China, Wild West, and especially Middle Ages.
Ooh.
The game still isn't perfect, of course. It still has its fair share of self-indulgent storytelling and tendencies to be frustrating for no real reason. Anyone who did Pacifist Edo Japan knows exactly what I'm talking about. But even then,
Pacifist.
it really
How do
adds to
you-
the experience. It may not be
Huh.
spotless, but the tight experience Live Alive offers on top of how gorgeous it is will certainly keep players coming back for more.
What the
If
hell
you
is that?
haven't played it already, go for it. Trust me, with what I have planned for the future, you're not going to want to miss out.
And moving on to number 2.
For over 2 decades, players of the original
the
Resident
Already
Evil
Dead
2
games.
have cried out in anguish over the same
Already
need
Dead?
and desire.
I meant the RE games.
But there was no bathroom to be found, and we were left to suffer. But then, 21 years later, a miracle was made.
Nice.
Capcom witnessed our torment, and they gave us something we desperately needed. They gave
A good
the
remake?
RCPD their bathrooms back.
Oh. A remake
The original
of
Resident Evil 2 for the
and
PS1.
Resident Evil
Still a really
3.
nice chapter in the franchise. It was atmospheric for the time, had a suspenseful storyline, and overall excellent gameplay for the time. Yeah, a lot of things about this game didn't age gracefully. The voice acting could have been better, the graphics are dated,
Maybe.
and some relationships felt more half-baked
Meant
than
the graphics.
intended. There are also issues with the controls, made even more frustrating with them being in tank mode. Tank mode's a bit of a rite of passage for gamers, to be honest. In 2019,
A
Capcom
little.
decided it was time to give
A
this
little.
classic a fresh coat of paint. only took them 20 dang years since they remade the first Resident Evil. And when they wanted to upgrade, they really upgraded.
Oh yeah,
Already,
love it.
right off the bat, we're treated to high-quality character designs, lighting, and cinematography that give the game an immersive, terrifying atmosphere. But it's not just the
Making
aesthetics.
it
No.
all amazing.
They fine-tuned everything that worked in the original and overhauled what didn't. That groan-worthy romance between Ada and Leon reworked so it feels more realistic and a little tragic. Those annoying escort missions? Bye-bye.
No
and
escorts.
the zombies? Way more terrifying and challenging. Now they feel much more like a legitimate threat, especially since they
especially if you
won't
don't get them off in time.
Which brings me to one of the most welcome changes of all.
He's
Mr.
gonna give it to you.
X. The big lumbering muscle of the original game, Mr. X was... I mean, yeah, you obviously didn't want to be caught by him, and he knew how to make an entrance, but getting away from him didn't really feel that satisfying.
Not back
all
then.
changes in the remake. Along with being
In
a
this case,
lot
it
more
does.
unsettling to look at, they also amped up his AI, taking inspiration from Nemesis from RE3, and making him way more adaptable. Now he feels like a legitimate stalker, and the
Look
minute
at that.
you hear those heavy footsteps, you can feel your heart jumping out of your chest like a bowling ball. You're going to have to work fast and smart if you want to make it out alive.
Yeah,
And,
especially when you're dealing with
naturally,
this guy.
there's always going to be a few kinks along the way. Claire's campaign isn't that different from Leon's. The police station is more of a maze, etc. But
yeah.
RE2's remake managed to fix the original's errors, add more spit and polish to what made it
Just making
great.
it
And even
all
took some of the
better.
best elements from other Resident Evil titles, all rolled together in a love letter to a great horror game and made all the more horrific.
Truly
Thankfully,
special.
I don't scare as easily.
What's up, Josh?
At least most of the time.
What's scaring you? Oh, damn it, come on. Now let's continue on. Honorable mentions. I thought
Near
so.
Replicant, fresh new look and voice acting. Half-Life, Black Mesa, started as a mod and then grew to a game all its own.
Okay, that's
Kirby
cool.
Superstar Ultra. Not much to improve over the old classic, but the gallons of additional content are worth it. Oddworld, new and tasty, completely remaking a 2D classic from the ground up, and it translates super well. Call of Duty 4, Modern Warfare. It would be on the list. Very high on the list. If not for ActivePlace's greed limiting play.
That's
Shadow of the
cool.
Colossus. Still debatably inhumane, and not entirely sure if this is
I may get that for
but
Christmas.
undeniably fun and harrowing.
And now on to number 1.
I'm sure you all saw this coming, but what would a list about remakes be without talking about Heart Gold and Soul Silver?
Did someone say Heart Gold and Soul Silver, my
No.
absolute favorite games of all time?
Oh, hey.
Oh, no,
Come
no,
on, Josh,
no, wait.
these games are
Honey,
important
stop.
to me.
Look, this
I need
is
to
my
talk about
channel.
it. This
You
is my
can't just-
territory. Get out!
Look at me.
Welcome.
I am the captain now.
Whatever you say.
Pokemon has a long history of remaking older generations in the format of the current gen. Some generations more than others. I'm looking at you, Gen 1! It's a trend that started in Gen 3 with the first remakes of Gen 1, Fire Red and Leaf Green. Oh, what innocent children we were. While Fire Red and Leaf Green were decent games, touching up Gen 1 with the modernizations of Gen 3 like abilities and
Yep.
natures, they were
Making
still
it
just
better.
Gen 1 with a better coat of paint. At least that's better than what happened
Yeah.
with BDSP. Rip my second favorite generation. Then Gen 4 rolled around and Arceus saw fit to bestow us all with the glory that is Heart Gold and Soul Silver. Where Fire Red and Leaf
God
Green were just
bestowed a
Gen 1
gift.
done again, Heart Gold and Soul Silver blended both Gens 2 and 4 together, but it also added plenty of their own additions. You can walk with your partner Pokemon! Game Freak, why is it 13 years later and this still isn't standard in every game? Yes, you put it in Scarlet and Violet, but
Oh,
even
well, there
then
you
it's
go.
not the
I was
same.
just about to
I
say it.
digress. Johto is brought to life beautifully in the Gen 4 engine on the DS. There are some areas of the game that I could just stare at for hours. They're so gorgeous. Mwah! Oh, yes. Ecruteak. Oh my goodness, it looks beautiful. The movie where
Nice.
Lugia and Ho-Oh show up. Yes! The sound design is also an absolute treat to listen to. Lugia and Ho-Oh finally got their own songs. Like I said before,
Ooh.
Legendaries didn't get their own themes until Suicune did in Gen 2. Not even Lugia and Ho-Oh at that time. Even after you become the very
Not
best,
bad.
like no one ever was. There's the fun, if shallow, Pokeathlon that has some actually pretty decent prizes. Catching Pokemon based on what the radio station is playing, the much-beloved Battle
Oh.
Frontier that still hasn't made its return even in the Gen 4 remakes, excuse me. And of course, the trippy ruins of Alph. I know of people who have
I
maxed out the
remember
in-game
that.
clock. And finally, you can actually get all the phone numbers for all the gym leaders in both Kanto and Johto And you can fight them all with advanced teams from all of the generations, like 1, 2, 3, and 4.
Love it.
Yes,
Love it.
please. Okay. Now, I would be remiss if I didn't admit that Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire had been in contention for this slot. However, while those are both amazing remakes in their own right and arguably have higher highs than Heart Gold and Soul Silver, they also have lower lows. Heart Gold and Soul Silver
That
are
is
just
something,
deep,
though.
enriching experiences from start to finish. It doesn't need to rely on gimmicks like flying on a Latios' back to find Hoopa rings that take you to random legendaries. It doesn't need Mega Evolving, Primal Reversion, Busted Sky Noodles, or even an added episode. They
Busted
just
Sky
made the
Noodles!
original game, but better. Keep in
That
mind,
is
though,
hilarious.
there's only one thing missing. A Switch port. I'm waiting, Nintendo. Where is Mama's port? I want to play it on the big TV.
Here's what I say. Nintendo, if you're listening, and you probably are, well, maybe give all of us fans a, like, Pokemon Legacy collection. Just take all the data you have for those games, and just move them into the eShop. You don't have to up them or anything like that. Well, okay, if you do up at least one thing, the XP share, if you don't mind. And make it an all for all.
I'm the Fiery Secretary, he's the Fiery Joker, and which one of his lists do you think need to be remade?
But, wait, what?
What have you done?
Have fun, dear.
Alright folks, well that's where I'm gonna end off today's video. I want y'all to remember to like, comment, and subscribe for more. Down in the description will be a link to the original video, so remember to support the original creator and all they do. And I'll see all of you folks next time when we flick on. Peace out.